Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Series 6 of Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours aims to record 200 loiners, that's people from Leeds, over the first half of the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and tell me about what they do all day and let me record how this decade affects us. Thank you for listening to this episode. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I kind of always knew, fortunately. I was a very demonstrative kid, and I always wanted to be an actor and be a performer. I was the kid grabbing the mic back when camcorders had microphones attached and hosting our family holiday videos. This is where we are, and that's my sister, and so I was off to the races at 6 years old.
Very nice. So we'll address it early on because it's a Leeds podcast, and you're not the first North American accent we've had on here.
All right.
I actually know where you're from this time, but I will ask anyway. So where are you from?
I grew up in Chicago, and I was there, and I went to college in the Midwest in Indiana, and then I moved to L.A. Well, actually, I had a little sojourn in London for almost a year, and then I lived in L.A. for about 20 years, and I've been in Leeds. I'll be 7 years in October, which is crazy.
So LA to Leeds, not via London. You've been there already. So
well, that's the thing. When I have a Yorkshire wife, and when we got LA, we had our fill, and my son was coming up on school age, and it was sort of time to take a break. Things were sort of at a good point for us to kind of take a little break from LA. And I said, "How would you feel about going back to?" Yes. She said before I could finish the sentence.
To God's own country.
Yeah. I said, well, we'll live in the UK. I go, but we're not going to live in Leeds. Like, we'll be in London. And so when we came over, I was coming back and forth. I had some gigs in London, but I really loved the train rides back up north, and I kind of could breathe. And I think the reason we lived in the Hollywood Hills, like pretty much under the Hollywood sign, so we were in the hustle and bustle of it all. And for me to come here is like, well, we wanted a change. In London, I felt it just would have been more of the same. And thank goodness you guys have a transportation system that works most of the time. So it was
still
just enough. So it made sense to stay up here, and I'm glad we did. I'm really glad we did.
Yeah, I mean it is a pretty place, and you do have aspects of the city, urban living, but you've got countryside like 5-10 minutes away.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You're listening to Series 6, Episode 28, and to my guest, Derek Miller. This is another Squadcast recorded on the 4th of August, 2025. Hello, colleague. Derek Miller is a native of Chicago, where he got his background in acting and improv at Improv Olympic, Second City, and Piven Arts. Derek spent 20 years in Hollywood, teaching and performing at the Second City, IO West, and UCB. His own improv show, Opening Night, ran for 20 years with over 1,000, mostly sold-out performances. He's used his improv chops on shows like Scrubs, The Goldbergs, Wedding Band, and Drunk History, and in movies like Transformers 3, and in over 100 commercials. He's also written 3 TV series, a sketch show, and a feature film released on Amazon last year. Since moving to the UK, Derek has taught improv all over Europe. He's been on the BAFTA-nominated Packed Lunch, which shot here in Leeds, and has written for Nickelodeon in London. You might have caught him this summer in Wednesday on Netflix, directed by Tim Burton. And you can see him from this week in the remake of the Arnie classic, The Running Man, where he got to work with another bucket list director, Edgar Wright. Derek is currently a gigging actor and writer based in Leeds, and he teaches screen acting and screen skills at Leeds Beckett University and Met Film Leeds. Right, let's do this. Episode 183 of Working Hours with Derek Miller. Let's jump straight into the next question, because there's lots of interesting things that we can talk about in there, but I'm sure other things will come out as we go. So I'm going to jump into, what are you doing now then?
Yeah, at the moment, I am doing a myriad things. I wrote a short film when we start shooting tomorrow. I have the television show Wednesday comes out on Wednesday this week, second series. I've got a couple episodes on that. And so I'm just kind of waiting for things to release. Everything takes like a year. I've got The Running Man with Edgar Wright that's going to come out in November. And I worked on an Apple Plus series. I got to shoot some stuff with Peter Sarsgaard, who actually I'd met in LA years ago. So that was great. So I've got some fun acting stuff coming up. And I'm always writing. I wrote an action movie for this guy, Tony Sheena, and I'm going to write another thing for him. So I have a meeting later for that. So always screenwriting, everything else. And then whilst I'm sort of boots on the ground in Leeds, I teach at both Leeds Beckett University and at Met Film, teaching screen acting and screen skills, which I've kind of stumbled into in the last couple of years. And I'm absolutely loving teaching university students, especially ones from, different parts of the UK and kind of, seeing what they bring to the table from their backgrounds. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and all the bizarre accents. How's your ear attuning to the various regional accents?
I'm okay. I can't get it like within a 20-mile radius or anything, but I know generally like, all right, North, Midlands, South. Yeah. Well, a decent beat on it. Definitely Scottish. I know those ones.
Can you understand Scottish now?
I can. I'm actually okay. Yeah. I'm better with that than I am Liverpool, so there you go.
Well, I mean, like Southerners are terrible with accents. I don't know if they've got better, but there was a TV show called Rabsy Nesbitt in the 80s, and they used to subtitle it for Londoners because they couldn't understand the accent.
I love it.
Listen!
It's like the Oasis documentary in America. They had to subtitle the whole thing for Americans, so there you go.
I know. It's amazing. But so like when Fargo came out, and over here, everyone was just like, what? Surely nobody speaks like that. Like, what's this? But yeah, you forget how English people a lot of the time just think there's sort of two American accents, like Southern and north part of the US.
Sure.
And that's it. And it's like, it's massive.
Yeah, we got our Chicago, and then we got Minnesota, and everything else in between.
Yeah. And yeah, I'll leave that. We'll get into the interesting bits. So, the next question. I mean, obviously, it's interesting what you're doing now, and I think it's obviously a get for both of those institutions to get someone who's actually worked in a field that most of the people who are interested in this want to actually be in, rather than, no disrespect to, the great tradition of British stage actors who've gone to screen and stuff like that, and people who've done a bit part here and a bit part there. But it's like, I know from myself, if I wanted to be in film and I was studying a course, if there was an American guy there, or woman, an American there who's worked in the industry, you're kind of like, yeah, I trust this person more.
And it's funny you say that, because there are two kinds of students. There's like the ones who get it right away, and or have seen Transformers 3 or whatever, like have a frame of reference. I mean, a lot of shows I was on, they don't have a frame of reference for, like Scrubs was a long time ago, and Goldberg's and Superstore and like stuff. It's all super American, so they don't really have a frame of reference for it. And the younger people today too, they don't consume media as much as the older generation. So I kind of appreciate that too. It's like, cool, you got to take me for what I'm giving you right now in the room. So like, there's ones that have me, venerated instantly, and there's other ones where I kind of have to work for it. And I appreciate that just as much, because it's like, okay, well, can I really articulate my skills to you after having done this for 30 years?
Yeah, I can imagine that. I've told this story on the podcast before, but I think you'll appreciate it. There was this AI accelerator thing. It was a partially government fund. It's still running. And I went along to the launch event, and the guy was... he was like a big player from Microsoft. He was a British guy, but he'd worked high up in tech, and he was coming over, and he was kind of he's sort of head person on this thing, and they were trying to do it like a small scale sort of Steve Jobs kind of, get excited, I'm doing this presentation to a bunch of Yorkshire people who had come along for free food and were like, yeah, whatever, mate. What you actually selling? Come on.
Yeah.
Just stony faces. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You have to prove yourself, don't you?
Yes.
So let's get into, I guess it comes back to the first question of your various, where you've lived around the world. How did you get into this then?
Well, the root of everything for me was improvisation, and early doors as a kid, I really liked the kind of freedom of it, and improv sort of part of the culture in Chicago. It's with Second City being there, and coming out of all those people that were compass players that came from San Francisco, and the Del closeness of it all, and all that stuff. And then I was trained at Piven, and like Jeremy Piven, his family, they ran this theater in Chicago. And yeah, so it was all sort of rooted in that. And so I kind of had that affinity for it early days, to the point where I just had to watch everything. And I was watching Who's Line from the UK, because we didn't have an improv show in America. And I was even like, on days when my theater teacher was sick in high school, I would teach improv to my fellow students. They let me take over. And so it was pretty fun. And then I started an improv group in college. I was a musical theater major initially, or at least I wanted to be. And I always say I'm a failed musical theater major. But but I started an improv group in college with a friend of mine from high school that's still going now. They're over 30 years now, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. And we were very industrious, and we wanted to be, pretty professional. We were getting paid gigs, and we paid for all of us to go on spring break every year. And so right out the gate, I knew that I wanted it to be something. And when I got to LA too, I was doing a lot of improv stuff. And when I lived here in England for a year, I was doing improv up in Camden with a group, and I was trying to teach them some longer form stuff to do. So it's kind of always been the backbone of everything that I've done. And my career kind of got kickstarted that way too. There were people who saw me in shows, and there were also people who saw me improvising, and I wanted to run casting sessions because I saw a lot of people who were behind the camera started booking a lot of work, especially in commercials. I'm like, well, that guy who just ran that audition, he's in all these spots, so he's gaming the system. So I had a telecom minor, so I was decent with the equipment and stuff. And back then it was all 3/4 inch tapes and 1/2 inch tapes, and DVDs. You had to be able to run 4 decks and do the Chiron at the same time when you were running auditions. But I had the improv skill, so I could come in and I could improvise with 100 actors for the day and kind of not run out of steam. Whereas these guys who were running the sessions didn't really have that skill. So that kind of ingratiated me into the commercial world a lot, and I started booking a lot of work that way. And then commercial directors saw that I could do that as well, and they did not know how to articulate those skills to actors. It's a lot more prevalent now. But like I worked for some really cool A-list directors. I was their on-set improv consultant for a few years, which was super cool. And I worked with, if I can name drop, probably I sent NDAs, but like, yeah, I worked with Bob Dylan's son Jesse on a bunch of commercials, and yeah, some pretty cool guys. So it was a good start to get the career launched.
So it sounds pretty straightforward. Pretty like, was it? I mean, was it fairly easy, or was it very much like living hand to mouth, getting the shows where you can, going wherever the money is, not really sleeping, being on couch? Like, was it that, or was it fairly comfortable, fairly ordered?
Never comfortable, never ordered. No, not at all. And that's the thing too, is like teaching the students now. And I was talking to my wife, I'm like, when I come back this semester, because this is just going into my 4th semester now teaching, or 3rd. It's like, I'm great to list my accolades and let them know everything I've done. But I think now I kind of want to put a little more emphasis on the struggle of it all, and kind of know that it was a scrappy existence. I was doing live shows 3 nights a week, and I was interning at the theater because I couldn't pay for classes. So I got all my classes paid for with intern hours. So I was just kind of, I sold my soul to, being at the theater almost every night of the week, and then working during the day. And many years I worked 6 days a week. I worked as a nanny because I could work in the afternoons and I was free for auditions during the day. I figured out that was the best way to do it. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so I loved kind of that world anyway. And then I would wait tables, or I did room service. I never wanted to say I was a waiter, but I did room service at the Chateau Marmont for like 5 years on every Saturday, Sunday, 6 a.m. shifts. So I saw, everybody as they were going to bed at that infamous hotel.
So what happened Like, so was it a running towards a kind of burnout, I need to change things, or was it, it started to build something and you actually started?
Yeah. I mean, there was success. There was some good success along the way. Like, I tested for a lot of shows. I tested for a pilot with Adam Sandler, and I was in the rooms with a lot of good people. I was in Scrubs in my early 20s, and I did like 3 episodes on that. And I was supposed to be recurring. So every week I got a call. They're like, "Are you available?" Yes. And that went on for like 4 years. And to the point where like I'd be out with friends, having a drink, and they're like, "Didn't you just get a call that you have to work tomorrow?" I'm like, "They're not going to have me," because I got so used to them not having me on the show. But, I did that, and then, so I got close. I always say, like, I couldn't get my car into fifth gear. It's like I got really close, and they call it quotes. Like, when you test for a pilot, you get a set amount of money, and you look at it and you go, "Oh, man, if I do well in the room right now, I'm going to make this amount of money." It's all hinged upon my performance in there. So it got to be a little soul crushing after a while. And I lived with some women who were insanely talented women, and were on TV shows and stuff, but they were sort of less enthusiastic about the state of my career. And they kind of let it be known to me that I probably should be a little further along. So those didn't end very well. And, they were hoping for more success. And that kind of, what defeated me a little bit as well, too. But I took a little break from LA after not being able to get my car into fifth. I got offered to tour on cruise ships with Second City, which was kind of came out of the blue at just the right time as I was, moving out of a place, with somebody I was dating. I'm like, well, this is great. I'm just going to sell everything, leave LA. I'll go make a bunch of money on this cruise ship because the money was quite good. And then I'll...
and tax-free.
And tax-free. Once you get out past the 20-mile marker. Yeah. And then, and then I'm like, well, then I'll go back and I'll study advertising because I'd worked so much in commercials and stuff and kind of understood the world. And I had the comedy background. I'm like, I think I'd be a decent copywriter. So that was kind of the plan, and I'd even applied to some schools for advertising. But then on the ship, it was really great because here I am in front of 2,000 people every week that are just laughing, having a great time. And I'm like, well, this is my audience. In LA, you're performing a lot for rooms of 100 people sitting on their hands or arms folded, like, impress me. What can you do for me? And a lot of them are all your competition, right? So they don't really want to see you succeed. And it kind of plays on you after a while. It's great. It's fun. The show I did there, I did the show called Opening Night, the Improvised Musical, for like almost 20 years. And, over 1,000 performances. And it was great. We had guest stars like Dan Castellaneta, and we had the guys from Blues Traveler in. And in the audience was like Nicole Scherzinger and the guys from LMFAO. So like a lot of people came out to see it. It was a really great show. But at the same time, it wasn't, it's not a huge moneymaker. There's not a lot of money in improv. It was all in service of the career. So, it's just like, well, even though I'm performing for these people and it didn't seem to be getting me anywhere, once I got out and I was performing for real Americans or real humans, and I'm like, well, this is who you're really performing for. And it kind of put a whole spin on everything. So like when I go back to LA, which I hadn't decided to do until I met my wife on the ship. She was also a performer on the ship, and she kind of convinced me, why don't you go back to LA and I'll come with you, and yada, yada. So I always kind of call her my muse because when I came back, I had kind of a new lease on everything. And I was only in LA for one reason, and that was for my career and to build something. And I think I had sort of let all the defeat for a long time kind of, not temper my existence, but it definitely was like, well, this is just life. And just, I wasn't leading with confidence or a straight spine. It was just sort of getting by. So it was nice when I came back. I said, from now on, I'm going to be brazen. And that was the word that I kind of put on everything. I'm going to be bold, all my auditions, because I got nothing left to lose. This is my last stab at it. And if it's too much, then that's fine. Yeah. And it ended up really working to my benefit. I booked my first 2 series regular roles like within 2 months of each other. So I had a lead on an MTV series where I played 20 different characters making fun of the show The Hills. It was a lot of me in drag, which was very fun. And I just went through the photo album of that. It's also equally frightening to see me in heels. And then I booked a Comedy Central series, and I was the first on the call sheet for that. So it was a huge win for that one. And then keeping in the brazen thing for that one too, I'd always written, and I wrote little one-man shows and stuff, and never really did too much with it. But I had, this is like those silly stories they tell you, but when I was working at the Chateau Marmont, I served Dan Aykroyd a bunch. And I finally told him, I'm like, hey man, I'm Second City, and I just want to let you know that I'd really cherish what your career and all the cool stuff you've done. And he goes, are you writing? I go, yeah, a little bit. No, are you writing? I'm like, oh, I write. He goes, rewriting. Don't ever stop writing. And he really kind of kicked me in the butt to get writing. And I think it's so cliche when people get those stories, but I'm like, yeah, why not? What's stopping me from doing that? So for that Comedy Central show, I showed up on the Friday with a case of beer. I was kind of mulling it over in my car, and I think I was even pacing outside the liquor store. I'm like, just go do it. Just go do it. So I drove my car over to where I knew the writer's room was and popped in, and at lunchtime, I'm like, hey, with the case of beer. And they're like, hey, why don't you sit down and pitch some jokes? And that was kind of the plan all along. So I pitched jokes, and by the end of the day, the showrunner, great friend of this day, Ben Wexler, is like, I'm going to see if there's room in the budget. We'll see if we can add you to the writing staff. So I got to write for the show I was on and write my own jokes. It was fantastic. It's a dream.
I know. And still, they'll, employment-wise, they'll still be like, well, you've got to have your CV, and your CV will be like this. And they don't even tell you how to fill in application forms, never mind anything else. And then and it's like, this is not how people get jobs in the real world. It's like,
no.
This is how you get rubbish jobs. You get real jobs through connections, through people, through being in the room, through asking, through showing, and through demonstrating.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I forget that too. And especially when I moved here, it's like, well, hey, here's this chunky CV that I have, and I've been on billboards. I've done all this stuff. People don't care. Like I've got nothing. I applied for tons of creative jobs and things, especially production houses. I directed too. I directed a lot of branded content when my career started taking off. I knew early days that I had to diversify. And that's the thing I really try to stress upon my students now is you can't be just one thing anymore. And one of the reasons why I left Los Angeles was because the money just wasn't there anymore for actors. I shot a series before I left, and I made in 6 episodes what I used to make in 1. And I could see the writing on the wall. I knew the strike was going to happen. And I didn't predict COVID, but that was another thing. But I knew we were in trouble, and I knew that the money, because the eyes aren't on the product, right? You used to have 10 million people watch Friends. Now you have less than 1 million watching a show, and that's good numbers. So it's like the advertisers aren't going to put the money in for that. So the advertising revenue is shot, it's split out now between streaming and everything else online. So the money's just not there to pay the actors who are pretty much the lowest on the totem pole when it comes down to it. So I knew that I needed to have a change. And so I knew early doors, though, that I needed to diversify. So that's when I got into directing and writing and producing my own content. And
I want to go back to coming back to LA, coming off the ship.
Yeah.
Did you have that realization of like what you'd actually got and what you'd achieved? Was that a moment where you could actually take stock? Because you're doing, and you're chasing, and you're waiting for that. You're waiting for that steady job or the big paycheck or, like the big breakthrough or whatever. But all that time, you're doing, and you're getting experience. You're getting practice. You're learning. You are learning the lessons of failure, of success, of practice. Yeah. Like, did you realize that, or did you know it all along, or was it a kind of, do you know what?
Oh, man.
I have spent decades, a decade doing this.
Yeah, I felt it very acutely. I had left in a really bad place, and I didn't think I was ever going to come back. So to kind of come back and be able to do sort of a victory lap was insane. And I had an agent at the time. He was my manager, actually, and I had him through he never signed me. I kind of had him on the side, and whenever I got a job, I'd have him work the contracts. And then when I got the MTV show, same thing. But he still wouldn't sign me. I'm like, what? Come on, man. And his roster is great because everybody at the same time was of us all in the trenches. So he had Jordan Peele, he had the Sklar brothers, he had Andy Daly, he had all these guys that have blown up, in the comedy world. So we were all sort of on the same level, like Barinholtz, all that crew. So, but I'm like, and then finally when I got the Comedy Central show, I'm like, I'm going to give you this, but you have to sign me. He's like, yes, it's fine. We'll sign you. And I remember being in my car. My dad, when he got into medical school, he tried several times and he put on the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun. Yeah, he said he got home and he just got the record. He just had it on repeat, and he said he was dancing around crying in his living room. So I don't know if it was just in my head, but I put "Here Comes the Sun" on in my car, played on repeat, and just cried while I drove through LA because I was so happy. So I it was, again, very acutely aware that the tide had changed for me.
Oh, I mean, it's good though. And it's that sort of thing of sticking it out was kind of worth it. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's very easy to sort of get to the point where you're like, I've given this a go. Like, I am with this at the moment. Like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
So it's easy to get there, but it's also like, if you can carry on, then not necessarily, there's doing it stupidly, but also there's like, you can keep doing this at a pace that you can keep doing it where it doesn't kill you, and it might actually work out, and you might get better opportunities. And
absolutely. And I mean, and that's the thing too about when I moved here, when I left, because there is that whole notion, and I know people say they feel the same way about London, about LA, where it's just like, if you leave, you've lost, right? Like that's, you cut your losses, and you've surrendered and you've given up on your dreams. And so when I left LA, a lot of people are like, whoa, why are you leaving? Because I was coming off of a good amount of work. Before I left though, I had a movie that I was a lead in that ended up not getting put out. I did that series, and we went to Cannes with that, and it never came out. And then I wrote a pilot that got made. It was the first pilot I made, and with amazing cast. That didn't go to series. So it was just like 4 really big. Oh, and I was on a sketch show that was an offshoot of SNL with a bunch of guys from Saturday Night Live on it. And that was, I felt like I got close to SNL, but that didn't go. And I worked on that for like 4 or 5 months. And it was just like, of my life gone. So I had like these 4 really big projects kind of go away. And that's when I took stock. I'm like, well, what am I doing really? Because like I've achieved all the things I wanted. I've been first on the call sheet. I've been on billboards in Times Square and on Sunset Boulevard. And I said, well, who am I doing it for? Am I doing it for God or for my parents, or who am I making happy?
For fame, for admiration.
Yeah. Gosh, and I knew I never wanted that.
For the art?
For the art, yeah, for art. But I mean, at the end, but now that I was a dad, and my wife's like, well, what's best for my family? And so when I left, I had a friend who really helped me out a lot through LA. He said, wait, we can leave?
You mean we don't have to do this and live like this?
We don't have to live this way? And yeah, I mean, like, obviously, I was about to say I got lucky, and I didn't get lucky. I worked really hard, and my dad says talent is long patience and putting in grafting, as you guys say, which I love, a fantastic word. So I was grafting actor for a really long time, and I'd like to say I was lucky, but I really put the work in, and I knew I was very cognizant of what I was doing in the room for auditions and stuff. So when it was time to go, it sucked, but I knew there's a big, beautiful planet we live on. LA's fine, but I'd seen all of LA. I'd done all of LA. I didn't need 20 more years of LA. I'd done it through the fun years of my 20s. I'd done it through the working year of my 30s. It's not a place to raise children. I knew that as a nanny, because there's just not the outlets. And, I had to drive 45 minutes to a park that was suitable for my son to play in, up into the valley. So I knew that we needed a change, and I'm so grateful that we did. But it was a huge punt, because it was like, well, what am I going to do now? Because my English accent's garbage. I've been working with...
I don't know anybody here.
Yeah, I don't. I have no one in the industry. Obviously, like I said, I got a decent CV. And so when I first moved here, actually, I was doing like pop-up restaurant stuff. I was doing food like the Bear. I was doing Italian beef, Chicago Italian beef at restaurants. And then COVID hit, and then I couldn't do that anymore. So yeah, it's been a lot of figuring out. But I think that's, going back to the improv thing, I've kind of built my career on, just jumping and hoping the net will appear. Like, well, what's the next suggestion? And let's see what I can spin the suggestion into, right? What's the prompt? And, name drop Jesse Dillon again. When I was working with him, he saw me doing all these different things. He's like, Derek, why are you doing all that stuff? Why don't you just go through the front door? I'm like, well, that's pretty easy for you to say. You're Bob Dylan's son, man. You were born in the front door. And I kind of shrugged it off at the time, because I thought, nepotism being what it is, it's like, well, I don't have that. But I think what that later evolved to was, don't keep trying to go through doors that aren't open for you. Go through doors that are closed to you, right? Go through doors that are already open. And I find myself doing that all the time. I'm like, going back to these locked doors. I'm like, well, no, there's plenty of other doors that will open for you, and that people will appreciate you. So it was just a matter of kind of finding those people. Like, I started to work at the Actors Center in London and teaching there, and that kind of got my love for teaching back up again. I always taught improv in LA. And then I'm like, well, actually, I know quite a bit about screen acting. So I started teaching some on-camera stuff. And then I worked for BAFTA up here in Yorkshire, which was great, the Yorkshire Academy of Film and TV Acting. And that kind of got me linked up into it again. So it's been nice. And then the election happened right after COVID, and they wanted some American voices, so I got put on Packed Lunch here. They were, and I ended up doing like 45 episodes with Steph's Packed Lunch here in Leeds as a talking head, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And I'm like, well, it was a good lesson too, because all of the guests that came in were, English celebrities, and it really gave me a nice lesson in pop culture and the entertainment in the UK, and and then I've grown to love Saturday Night Takeaway and all these other shows that are iconically English, and kind of so I don't feel like a fish out of water anymore. I do feel immersed in the culture, and it's part of the conversation.
Have you been the token American in an Agatha Christie adaptation yet?
God, no, please do that. Please Poirot me.
I'm going to move on to COVID next, because we mentioned it a couple of times. But I want to come back again to the improv thing. So improv is reactive mostly. I think you would probably say that's fair. Do you think has that been the main skill, that you've been always like, right, I've got something for this. I can think of something. I can handle the situation. How much of the proactive stuff did you have? Was that something you had to develop? I mean, obviously you're proactive in that you're writing, you're setting up all these things, but did you, what was your relationship with the reactivity and the proactivity, do you think?
Well, I think you figure out how to synthesize both of those things at the same time. And I think it's inspiration, right? So you get a suggestion and you're inspired by it. It's going to make you think or feel a certain way. Hopefully feel a certain way, because that's funnier than just thinking of stuff. People resonate more with feelings than just cleverness. But that's two different ways of improvising between the US and the UK, which I don't need to do a deep dive into. But in terms of making it suitable for camera, that's something I learned early days that not a lot of people were good at. 'Cause there's a million improvisers in LA that were fantastically talented on stage that could never translate the skill to the screen. It was too ephemeral or too off topic. So to improvise efficiently, that definitely was my skill. And I was able to look at a script and go, oh, this character's this, and it could also be that, this, and this. So I could come in and there's a whole slew of these guys like me and girls that were really great at coming in and improvising stuff in commercial and providing better buttons for the commercial than the copywriters had written. So they started to look for improvisers, but that took a good 10 years into my career before they realized that. And they're like, on set, give me a run of endings that are going to be better than this commercial. And there's sometimes we'd all get mad that at a callback, we'd improvise something and then we'd see it in the commercial later and get pilfered by the writers. But yeah, I think that was kind of the benefit of it. And then also, like, when you're like, there's not a set I've been on where they haven't let me improvise. Really, I think this last Apple series I didn't do any improvisation because the writing was bang on. But actually we did. In the end, they let me kind of say whatever I wanted, which was great. Put the little button on the scene. But that was the kind of thing. And then the directors always, I got so many compliments for it. They're like, oh, thank you. You're just able to. We can just let it run and you can just keep giving us stuff. So I love that. And I like to be valuable that way. And I feel like more a part of the production that way. Like,
were you bringing yourself to it? Like, I've said this a bunch of times on here, and I think it's from a TED talk or something. I don't know if it's even from a book I read, but it's like, what they got down to is like, what makes a good job is meaning, purpose, and autonomy. So you have to know why you're doing it, know that you can get better at it, and be able to have some input into it.
Yeah.
So if you can, you can turn up, you can learn your lines, that you can deliver the performance, deliver the line, but you can also make up your own lines, change the delivery, bring other things to it, that they have choices in the editing room to use. Because I've written stuff and I've made, I've translated it into other mediums, and it doesn't stay the same. What you're writing in your head, it's never going to be exactly like that. Because it's different when it comes into the world.
Absolutely. And there's a verisimilitude of like, well, hey, there's a fireplace here now. And there's all these other things that are going to affect the character. It's part of the reality, right? So that to me, these are all little springboards for a little comedy or inspiration, or how can this feed my character? If I'm antsy, then I'm scared of it. Or if I love stuff, I can, throw my affections to these other things. So, again, it's just like, and I think there's a lot of people, when people get bored or disillusioned. Maybe that's hearing us talk about it now. Maybe when actors get grumpy on, I think we're doing the best job on the planet. It's like, well, maybe you're not in. Again, like all the things that you just rattled off, you're not feeling.
You're not
like
doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, you're not.
You've lost sight of why. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it does come back to that why of like, why am I doing this? Like, is it just for the money? Is it just like, because if you've got a family or something, you need to pay bills. You've got a straightforward why. I have to do this. This needs to be done. But, you know, it doesn't have to be awful as well. Like sometimes it is and sometimes it has to be because you're kind of stuck until you can get into a better situation. Yeah. But generally, there is better places to move to.
For sure. And on that same note, this is kind of cool. When I moved here, like, again, like, you know, my cheese got moved. There was that famous book from the 90s, Who Moved My Cheese? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but like my dad gave it to me.
I love it already, though.
I will sum up the whole book for you. Basically, it is, you know, rats in a maze. You put the cheese down, they go find the cheese, and then they take the cheese away, and the rats keep going to the same place looking for the cheese. And so it's basically in your life, they're going to move the cheese, and you need to keep moving. And I think you get, you know, same thing. Improvise, you get new suggestions. So when my cheese got moved to here, I was like, well, I got to figure out, I can't keep going back to the same well. And there was a woman who was on Packed Lunch with me, Christy Wuna, who was doing all these B horror movies. And like, oh, we need Americans. I'm like, wow, I've never done that before. I've never done a horror movie or anything like that. So I kind of pestered these guys, Scott Chambers and Reese. They're the ones behind the Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, you know.
All right,
yeah. Take or leave that. But I mean, they ended up, you know, making, you know, millions of dollars on, you know, a very low budgeted movie. And so I said, well, how are these guys cranking out? You know, I think they did like 40 films in I don't know how many years, like at the point when I kind of joined them. And I'm like, they're really doing it for the love of the game. And they kind of figured out what the future of production is going to be. And they were able to kind of circumnavigate the industry by kind of going away from the traditional production model and going straight to distributors, the people who sold the movie. Like, well, we'll just get the distributor money and then we don't have to pay anybody else. We'll just make it ourselves. Yeah. So it was very clever. And I think, you know, moving forward, I think people are going to have to get a little more creative. It was very like Roger Corman and, you know, punk rock stuff. It felt very like 70s, and it was kind of neat to see him do it. And these are kids who grew up with digital cameras and being able to create digital effects on their computers, so they don't cost a ton of money because they are kind of born with the skills. So it was fun, and it was fun to go do those things. And sure, I took a punt financially. Like they were, you know, some of them I broke a little bit even on terms of travel and hotel to go do these movies. Yeah. But it kept me, like, I think inertia is really important for anybody. Like, just keep doing what you love. And I got to improvise on set and kill people with dinosaurs and shoot shotguns at aliens. And I did a few of these things. And then I wrote a movie for them too. I'm like, well, could I write a monster movie? I wrote Monsternado, and that came out on Amazon a couple years ago. So, I mean, it's to look at my resume, like, what is this mess of stuff that this guy's done? But I think that's the cool thing. And it's made me just want to be weirder and try odder stuff and keep doing things, because again, like, if that door opened for me, why not go through it? And I keep, you know, if the other doors are closed right now. Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, I immediately are thinking of Nick Cage. Like, right. And you're like, why? But I'm like, if you think of his career going up to, like, leaving Las Vegas and the Oscar win, and then his career post-Oscar win, and he did, like, you know, a few action movies, and he was really on. He was like hotter, and then he just went off, and like, you know, he had various struggles. He was doing anything, but at the same time, that period of doing anything has really made him now, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it's like, I mean, you have to be in everything. Like Willem Dafoe always had good props, but now he's like, he is top level, like, because he's been in everything. Like, you'll have seen him do a good at least 4 or 5 good performances. Like, everyone will have seen Willem Dafoe do at least 3 or 4 really good performances. And at that point, it's like, then you're national treasure level, you know?
Exactly. And then you can go do your Color Out of Shapes and your Mandy's and
Yeah, and then you can just retire on the chat show. So.
Or do all the Comic-Cons. And you're fine. Yeah.
So, do you have anything else to add, or shall I move us on to COVID?
No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I thought that had kind of wound up, but I didn't want to shut you off if you had anything else to say. So, let's go back into COVID. So, It was a long time. There was a lot of experiences. There's a lot of emotions tied up in that period. But feel free to share or not share what you want. But the main thing that I want to look at the experience going into lockdown for you. And then whenever you sort of felt you came out, and if anything changed permanently for you in that post-COVID period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be, I think it's a polarizing thought, but when I talk about COVID, I have such an affinity for it. And I think it was such a magical time because I was coming out of 20 years in LA, and the anxiety and the white noise of the city and aspiration and just the panic on a daily level of trying to get work or do stuff or, FOMO, everything else of just going 1,000 miles an hour. And I thought I was relatively chill, but until COVID happened, I'm like, oh, I can take a break. Like there's literally nothing I can do. This is what
relaxation is.
Yeah. Or just to quiet my mind.
Yeah.
It was so fantastic. I ended up getting tinnitus through it. And I think that was a reaction to my brain hearing and it taking in so much all the time and then not having that it tried to compensate.
It's like, where has all the noise gone?
Yeah. We have to create our own noise. Like, come on, ears, damn it. But I think it was really good for the family and the amount of time I got to spend with my son and, home learning. In the beginning was fine until they started telling me I wasn't doing it right. And then we, had odds, but I created a cooking show with him. We were shooting just for friends and family. But I lucked out too. I was writing for a cartoon for Nickelodeon at the time, which we could do remote, which was really great. And packed lunch ended up early doors, letting us come in, and we were distanced on set. So I got, 2-3 days a week, go be on TV in the middle of, lockdown. So I was really lucky through the whole thing. But I think that the big takeaway for me was just the amount of time I got to spend with my family. Now, in terms of the industry, things really changed because self-taping became more prevalent. And I was sort of happy on a couple levels because when I was running sessions in LA, you'd have 100 people in a day driving to your session, and I would be down at one of these studios, let's say I was on 200 South La Brea. There's 6-7 studios running at the same time. And that's, 700 people in a day that are all driving to this Petco, in the middle of Los Angeles for 2 minutes on film. And I just thought from an ecological standpoint, that's bonkers, the carbon footprint for 5 minutes of time for these people. And a lot of times they were just look-sees or just, doing our idents or profiles and stuff, slates as we call them in America. And then, so I'm like, and when self-taping became more prevalent because you couldn't go into the studio, so you had to record at home, a lot of people hated it. And there's people I still know, we should be paid for that. It's our time and our thing. I'm like,
Are you paid for the audition?
Yeah, exactly. It's cost. I had to buy equipment and do my backdrop and my ring light. But I loved it. But I ran sessions, for 15 years. I ran casting, so I can read a brief and I know how to articulate that really well. So
and you know what they're looking for as well.
Exactly. And if not, I'll give you a few different things. And then I went bonkers because I had all the time in the world. So I was literally shooting the full commercial for them sometimes. And they're like, I booked a few things. They're like, you showed us the spot. Just do what you did at home. I was putting, cameras in my refrigerator and, riding bikes down my street. And, yeah. So it was fun. But I think the world's changed that way. And I think it's for the better because especially now, and that's what makes living in Leeds doable because I can self-tape everything here. If I have a callback, I can go to London, but I'm not going down, 10 times a month. I can go down 3 and it's, saves on the train fare. And even if I was going down 10 times, my mortgage here is still less than anything in London. So I'd still be coming out ahead. So it's worked out really well to be able to enjoy Yorkshire and enjoy Leeds and still feel like I'm, got my hand on the pulse of stuff, which is all part and parcel to COVID.
Do you feel like you're at a point where I don't want you to say anything that you might feel might jinx yourself or anything, but do you feel you've got to that kind of point where you're now like, I've done enough, I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge, I can say no to stuff, and also I have a situation where I'm comfortable enough or secure enough just about to be able to go, I'm not going to do that. That's no good for me. Unless you really want to do it, unless it's like, that sounds really interesting. I don't care, if I'm not going to make all the money in the world. Yeah. I want that experience.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, like the weirdness. Like, I will go do stuff. I was like, well, man, I will go do that odd thing, even if the money's not fantastic, because again, like it's not something I've done before. Like, got eaten by a triceratops or something. Yeah, they don't eat people. A T-Rex, eaten by a T-Rex. But like, but I do feel more comfortable turning stuff down. There's only a few things I would turn down in America. Like I wouldn't work for Walmart because I didn't think what they were doing to the working class of America was very good. And so I had my lines of what stuff I would kind of do. And then I turned something down here yesterday that I was offered that was fine. But it just doesn't, for the time and the effort, it wasn't worth it. And, I am getting found more now, like people know that I'm here and stuff, so it's nicer. But I mean, like, again, like I don't want to jinx it because it does ebb and flow, but it is being present. It's like enjoying right now. Like, I realize I'm very lucky. Like I think I had, I don't know, 10 or 12 self-tapes in July, and some people are like, oh man, I've only had 2 since December. And so I know the plight of an actor, and I know how tricky it is. So I'm very grateful for where I'm at right now. And I know that all can shift. But that's the thing with teaching and being diversifying, like shooting my own short and kind of doing stuff. The more you kind of build up these skills, then when you have these fallow times, you're able to exercise them in the way you want. And also the thing is too, is like not making it more about what I enjoy rather than marketability. And like when I was in LA, everything like, well, let's make this marketable. Like the pilot I made was based on something that my agent had done. And it was very like in the zeitgeist, and it was really trying to write and capture that. And that's tricky. And I think there is a disingenuousness to that people kind of pick up on. We all know when a show's sort of preaching to us or it's being built on edifice rather than personal experience. So I think now it's like, okay, well, I will go back to being a little bit more passionate. Obviously I want things to be marketable or be really good. But I think I understand that. That's already in my bones. So now I can just have my ideas and let them, let's see what happens. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to do Brexit next because I don't know if this will. I mean, I guess you were here.
I was
when
here.
Lockdown started, so you were here for Brexit. Did that affect anything, or I mean, because it's not changed. I mean, we can argue the specifics, but sort of. It didn't theoretically change anything between the relationship with the US and the UK. But, did you feel any impacts? Was there any noticeable change in how you've worked since we have Brexited?
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing is there was so many Brexit did, I'm going to give you, edit this however you want. With the arrival of Brexit, I think there was a lot of changes, in the entertainment industries in Europe for sure, because now a lot of these productions that it wasn't free flowing back and forth. You can still go, and there's a lot of stuff shooting around Europe and Bulgaria, and I shot a job in Kyiv before Brexit, and obviously before the war in Ukraine, before things turned down. But I did notice that there's a huge drop off in work for actors and things that were shooting in the continent. And I know they were building a lot of studios like in Portugal and stuff. And I think a lot of that stuff kind of got turned around because it wasn't as easy to get people over for work. So yeah, it was kind of a huge bummer on that front. And then, all the political stuff notwithstanding and all the ridiculousness of it. Yeah, I mean, I'll leave it with that. The ridiculousness.
Well, I'll ask this because I know. So I might be getting my timing wrong, but I know sort of when COVID had kind of supposedly officially finished, there was a lot of production going on in Yorkshire at the time. They were shooting like Secret Invasion and stuff. Like Sam Jackson was here, and You're like so
Huddersfield and all that. Yeah, Halifax,
so there's like loads of production that was going on, and I know and people that I was speaking to at the time who were sort of in theatre and stuff, the theatre was having issues because film and TV production was nicking all their staff because they'd lost staff and there was more production going on. So theatre was like, we haven't got any people now. So yeah, was that happening, and was that because I feel like that was impacted by Brexit, maybe, but I think it was more impacted by maybe the change in the interest rate. Like, did you catch any of that? Does it still feel as busy as it was?
Well, yeah. I mean, so much has dried up in Los Angeles, and there's people I know that were working. My contemporaries that were consistently booking jobs are now who haven't booked things in a couple of years, and it's really died out, and so much stuff's come over here, which is really sad. I mean, it's fine. It's nice for me, but it's kind of sad to see. And I was saying this to my wife. I'm like, it's crazy because I love old Hollywood. I love the history of it. I loved being on the sets. Like, God, nothing made me feel better than walking around the Paramount lot or Warner Brothers when I had a job, or even when I was shooting at Universal. Like, my dressing room was across from the Transformers ride, and every lunch break I'd go into the theme park and ride the rides. And
it's
I love
surreal, isn't it? It's like, how am I here?
Yeah. I shot in the Back to the Future square, and we went through with my son at Christmas. I'm like, I shot right here, man. He's like, yeah, whatever, Dad. I'll show you the photos. But I love all that stuff. But to think that, like, that's only like 100 years of history, something that seems like it's impenetrable and will go on forever, and the magic of the movies and their studios closing. It's really sad in a lot of ways. But, it's, again, a byproduct of kind of rampant capitalism and where the industry is. It's just they never really kind of figured out how to manage that better. I think everybody kept thinking they were going to ride it forever, and the people at the top definitely weren't going to take a pay cut, because if it goes away, then you're going to need that money, and who knows, but anyway, but for back to the Brexit thing, I think with this stuff coming over and COVID, there was, the tax breaks are huge, and that's why stuff moved to Bulgaria, and then tax breaks in Ireland. So that's where Wednesday was shooting last summer outside of Dublin. So they're going to go where the money goes, and, shooting Glasgow for New York. Spider-Man's up there right now, and they shot Wonder Woman there, and that's where we were for Running Man. So, yeah.
We haven't mentioned Running Man yet. We'll come back to that at the end, because I'll do a bit of like what's coming up and so.
Sure.
So, what was I going to ask next? Oh, I had a good segue. My brain doesn't work.
That's okay.
It was. Go on.
No, fine. I've been tangenting all over the place. So yeah.
This is what podcasts are for. So yeah, I've remembered what it was. So I was gonna, because you've mentioned the sort of the financial situation. The other thing that I think is a big part of that, social media, and like obviously the move from the big screen to the middle screen to the tiny screen.
Yeah.
What I want to look at in terms of social media is how much do you have to do? Because it feels like everyone has to do a little bit for their work, no matter what it is now. Yeah. And depending on how much time you have to spend on it, do you think that time given gives you a good return on investment for that time? I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel that it's rewarding and that you're good at it and you know what you're doing?
I'm fair to middling at it, and I know that I need to engage in it. And I think for people, I'm 50 now. Like, I'm not going to put on airs about how old I am, but I think I'm a lot better at it than my peers are, and I understand which place, the space that it takes up in people's lives. And for me, it's more of a research tool. Like, again, it's like keeping a hand on the pulse of what's happening in the industry and what's being cast and what actors are doing. And so for me to kind of feel like part of the community, even though I'm living in, tucked away in this little provincial town on the river where we are, I feel like I'm still a part of the conversation, and I know what's going on. And like, even with my students, they'll mention stuff and I know what they're talking about. And my son's surprised that I know what memes are. And so I feel like there's something to that. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, a writer friend, and I was telling him about students who can't sit through a full movie because their attention spans have been sort of truncated by TikTok. And it's like, and you can get mad at that stuff and you can be angry about it, but it doesn't fix it. So it's like, well, it's real and it's here. And it's like, okay, how do we deal with that? And then I've got some actor friends who I was fortunate enough to bring on to, when I was doing Monsternado, I was able to get a lot of jobs for actors, like my brother's in it, and my friend Michael from up here in Leeds, and a ton of friends from London are in it that were improv actors who hadn't really done too much film. But it was nice to bring them on board. And two of the actors from that are doing vertical dramas now, which is,
oh, yeah.
Watch on your phone. Yeah.
The TikTok ones, yeah. And I was like, for years, I was like, why aren't people doing that? Like, because everyone's watching it like that. I was like, why aren't people doing that? Like, that's going to come. And I'm going to see it in the cinema one time of like, someone is going to shoot a film on a phone that way, and it will go to a cinema at some point.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid it goes to a cinema, but it is, it's being watched and there's money in it, and that's the thing. And it's like, oh, well, I would never do that. Why would you never do that?
Yeah,
like, it's like saying like, well, I'm not going to do color film because I don't like my skin tone.
I would never do Shakespeare in the Park.
Belongs in a theater. So it's like things are always going to change and evolve, and entertainment is, and you could be grumpy about it, and that's the same thing. Like people like, well, I'll only audition back in the studio, and I don't want to self-tape, and I want well, we're not going to go back to that anymore, because also the money's not there for casting directors to rent out a studio for the day and to pay a session director. It costs a ton of money for them to do that, and the money's just not there. So self-taping's part of the game now, and it's going to be that way forever. So again, it's like when they move your cheese, stop going back to that place in the maze, right?
I am going to so use that, the moving my cheese. That tickles me. So did you ever see it as a way, obviously with self-tapes and stuff, and you've mentioned, like being a bit creative with your auditions for stuff.
Yeah.
Do you...
Well,
here's
something. We'll talk about social media in the early days. So like back in like 2009, I got approached by a subsidiary of Fremantle in LA. There was a character I was doing on stage in LA for an improvised, well, it's characters, more like a sketch show, but it was like a pub quiz. And it was super fun. And the characters would come out and ask the question. My buddy Dave Holmes and Scott Gimple, who's the impresario of the Walking Dead world, they ran this quiz night. Two awesome guys. And they kind of gave me this character because it was kind of akin to who I was. It was every hipster. Because at the time I was going to Coachella and I was kind of a part of the scene. So I was kind of making fun of those guys. And so I did this every hipster character. And they're like, well, why don't you make a video for that? I'm like, I'm too old. I was 32 at the time. And I thought I was way too old to be doing stuff on the internet. And that's for the kids. So I created this character and we shot a series and it did really well. And it became branded content. I was one of the first people doing branded. So I had to do an episode with Verizon phones. And then I did an episode where Toyota brought a car and I did an episode surreptitiously showing the features of the car while being in character. It was like a little, hidden commercial because that's where things were going and that's where things are now. Like, I don't think Toyota's giving influencers cars. Well, maybe they are. If you're like Speed or Mr. Beast, I'm sure he could get a whole fleet of cars at any second. But at the time, back in 2009, and for me, I'm like, well, I'm just kind of doing this thing on the side. But because of that really helped me because I think that character, Fremantle, ended up producing my Comedy Central show. And it got me in the room with them. So all of that stuff kind of pays off in ways that you don't even know what it's doing. And there's people who are building their careers on it. And I think that's absolutely fine. And for me to have turned my nose up at it and then looking back at my career, I'm like, oh, man, I don't think I'd be where I am without having done social media or having these YouTube videos. And it would have been TikTok had it been, 15 years later. But there you go. The biggest thing I learned in life is like with improv, right? You have to be pliable and you get a new prompt all the time and you have to be accepting of that prompt. One of my biggest things I hate in improv is when people get a suggestion, they go, no, not that one. Well, why is that one not good enough? You're like, what's a better suggestion? Yes, and to it. I said, you could give me spatula every night of the week, and that's fine because I'm going to feel differently about a spatula tomorrow than I do right now, than I did this morning, right? So things ebb and flow, and if we realize that we are the ones that are pliable, not the prompts, like then we're going to be okay. Or stupid prompt like everybody hates getting dildo. Like, go for it. Give it to me 1,000,000 times. Like, I will give you a new spin on it. And I think that's kind of the difference, right? It's like turning down suggestions to give the right thing rather than accepting everything as is, right? That's the suggestion you got. So I'm kind of a purist that way, but I think it's a good metaphor for life, really. It's like, hey, this is how it is. It's like the same thing. Like, here's TikTok. No, not TikTok. Give me another suggestion. It's like, no, it's here, man. You have to acquiesce to it and deal with it. And there's an actress I worked with last summer. I did a commercial with Gordon Ramsay for Hexclad, and she was doing this commercial with me. She's like, I just do these on the side because I'll make all my money on social media. And she has a great account called Queen in the Castle. And she goes, I make far more money doing like being on TikTok than I ever did traditional acting. And she was on like Mad Men, and she'd done stuff. But she's like, oh, just making my Queen in the Castle content. I'm doing it. So.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, like when you get the work, they pay good rates. Like, but the problem is that you don't always get the work. So,
well, I mean, it's gambling. It always is. It's like, and you can get better at reading cards, and that's when skill versus talent becomes a thing. And it's like you can learn how to read everybody in the room if you're a good poker player, and If they kept hitting red, your odds better for black, and like you can kind of watch things that way. But again, it is a gamble and everything's a punt. And, it's like when I have time off and I'm doing stuff that's creative, it feels like I'm not working. But in reality, I am. I am making something that could be something, and it's all speculative. And that's when it's a bit of a panic. And I think for a long time, my wife didn't quite know how to deal with the lulls in my work early doors of my career. When we got married, I was on 2 shows back to back, and then I had another series. And then after 5 years, things got quiet. And she's like, well, what are you going to do now? I'm like, oh no, this is all the time before you moved here. Like, it was always like this. So, and then now she's at a place like, well, this is just a quiet time for you. You're going to be fine. Yeah. Something else will come along. And she's actually more zen about it than I am in a lot of ways. I've gotten better, but she's like, well, you'll get something else soon. And it's very nice to have a partner who kind of understands that and has faith in the stuff that you do. So
yeah, but then know that, you know, you are going to be back to being proactive. You're going to be proactive about it. You're going to be looking for stuff. You're going to be listening to any opportunities that come along, you know, and you're smart enough to take them and, or at least assess them like properly. Of like,
yeah, 100%.
Is this good? What do I want out of it? And so on.
Yeah. And then like, I can't stop doing the improv thing. I've been all over Europe teaching. I've been in Amsterdam and Paris and Portugal, and I was just I go to Ireland a lot. I've been to Ireland like 14 times. Dublin, I've got a group there that 2 groups there that I started their improv groups, an improvised movie and then an improvised musical there that's just crushing it. They just had a big show on the Liffey, and then Belfast just had me up there, and I taught a 2-day course. So it's been pretty great. I mean, like, so I do fill my time and like I want to see everything. I like, even living here in Yorkshire, I feel like I've been a tourist for 6 years, and I have people asking me, where should I go for this? Or what's good for that? Like, I like that I've become sort of a conduit for, you know, Yorkshire tourism in a way. So,
have you seen Kes yet? I've not seen Kes.
That is hilarious because that's been like, I gotta see Kes. I tell my wife, I'm like, I gotta see this. She's not seen it either. So I know it's a hallmark of Yorkshire cinema. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, they did an open. I can't remember. I don't know if they've done it yet, but they're putting it on the open air cinema. I think they have shown it already.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, but I don't think that. Well, I haven't seen it, but in my mind, that's not Ken Loach's best. Ken Loach's best is I, Daniel Blake.
Right.
Have you seen that?
I've not seen that either, so I need to.
Oh my God, it's me and the person that I went to see that with, when we came out of the cinema, we went silently to the car. We went and sat in the car, and then we both just wept.
Wow.
Just like, oh God. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, it's so be prepared if you do watch it.
Adding it to my queue.
Oh yeah. Anyway,
you're reliving it right now. You're there. You're back in that car.
So do we want to say any more on social media? Anything else that you think?
Well, I mean, on that front? The last thing on social media is just like figuring out how to market yourself or do all that stuff. I'm not great at that, and I've become more protective of my image and stuff. Like, I just lost out on a big job on Friday, and I had signed NDAs, and I thought it was a total slam dunk. And I luckily found out the person who got it because I knew through casting routes. And the person who got it is not me, and what they bring to the table is something I'm not comfortable with. Like, it's a very, they almost play a character of themselves. Does that make sense? And which is fine for the comedy world. People have a presentment and that's their thing. And for me, I don't like that because I don't want to be a presentment. I want to be authentic. And there's I grew up, you know, like, I got to meet Chris Farley when I was younger, and I knew a lot of these people who were, you know, these comedy legends, and they sort of have to give over to that. And not saying that I could ever have been on the level of Chris Farley, but there is something that you have to do to give over to that, where it is almost a character, and you kind of lose yourself in the process of that.
Yeah, and you have to always be on as well, don't you? Well, or you feel you always have to be on. Yeah. If someone comes up to you, and then you've got to be on, and it's like,
like people shoving food in John Belushi's face because he did that in Animal House. He couldn't go anywhere without people trying to shove food in his mouth, like Bluto from So it's like, I didn't want that stigmatism. Not like I said, not that I ever be that way, but it is something I'm very acutely aware of. Like, if you build a persona online and your market, you kind of have to hang with it, and it's too binding for me.
But like, what's the point? You've gone into a world of performance where you want to be different characters, bring out different aspects of other people, but also from yourself, from your own personality, and to be someone else. So why would you want to be one thing? You know, why would you ever want to be one thing? I don't understand.
And that's the fun, like, think of having improv on stage. Like, I know I'm only going to get cast as, you know, dad bod guys in their 40s and 50s from now on. Like, I know my brand, But on the improv stage, you can be everything, and that's what's kind of fun. So it's all the stuff you were sort of promised in theater school, like I'll be an old lady, or I'll be a velociraptor, or a talking bowl of cereal. You can be anything, and I like that. So I'll save it for that. I don't need to brand anything on social media.
When you mentioned the velociraptor, that immediately took me back to Colin Mockery being a dinosaur. And whose line is it anyway?
That is a
years
classic.
And years ago. That was that was brilliant. So I'm going to do the big one, climate change. How does climate change affect your work? Do you see it affecting your work in any way?
Obviously, it's going to affect where things are able to be shot and things like that. Like I said, I was cognizant of, 500 people being in their cars driving to an audition, and, that being kind of sustainable. And yeah, I think, things, it's already changed where all right, so I shot a thing here in Leeds last year that was supposed to take place in San Francisco, and they built this whole set over at Versus Studios. And I was like, would this be possible to pull off California, 5, even 10 years ago, where you count on so many sunny days, or even any sunny days, right? To be able to shoot in Leeds for California. So I know that it's changing, and that might be like, well, great, we can do that here now. But I think it's not hard to draw lines between to see how that's going to become more problematic, or extreme weather is going to change entertainment that way. So, but there are more sustainable ways to do things, and there's less crew needed for some stuff. So the footprint for things becomes smaller. So I don't really know. I mean, obviously I'm concerned about it, and it is something I worry about how it's going to affect it on the grand scale. I don't produce at that level, so it's hard for me to kind of speak to that. Yeah. But,
I'm thinking of the LA fires, and obviously that's always been a thing, but the scale and the veracity, the intensity, the frequency has not always been like that. And obviously you've spent time in LA, you will probably know people in LA. And so as another example, I had friends that were in New Orleans in Katrina. And I remember getting emails of from them of what was going on or what they were seeing. So you must be getting sort of secondhand stories of some of this stuff, and how people are feeling about it. Are they all just it's the government being useless, or is it oh damn, this is really worrying? And what is I mean, I'm not asking you to answer for everything and talk for everyone, just the sort of what you've heard.
Well, I mean, like I said, the industry took a huge hit just with streaming, and then COVID definitely set everything back, and a lot of production left. And then I think that the fires was pretty epic. My wife's brother lost his house in the Palisades, and he just was here yesterday talking about how he's going to rebuild. And my friend's a good director friend of mine who shot that last series that I went to Cannes with, he lost his house over in Pasadena, the other side of the city. So it really affected the people who are working in the business. And, there's times when we lived in the hills, there was a fire across the street, and I grabbed my son, and it took 2 minutes for it to go from the bottom of the hill to the top. And luckily the helicopters were there putting it out, but I kind of stood there at the ready watching the fire rip through the brush. So it is, it's dangerous. It's going to get worse. And, the studios are all situated within that stuff. It's not like anything's protected or hidden. So, but it's also just the impact on the people who are making the films, the workaday people, the grips and the scene painters and everybody else losing their houses and their livelihood. It's just, insult to injury, really. Injury to insult. It's all insults and injuries.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, so I did the working visa in Australia, so we can do, so because of the empire, we can do working in Australia or Canada, or 2 years, or New Zealand and working visa. And I did a year working visa in Oz, and we're in South Australia, and we were near some of the bushfires, and it's scary stuff. And we met this other couple, this Belgian couple, who were in a town where it had literally, they were showing us photos of This was the sky when it was orange. This was when it was completely black. This is all the ash on everything in the town. And I was like, just looking at the images that they've got, and you're just like, this is terrifying. Like,
yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom got evacuated at one point. My sister was evacuated for a week, and yeah, it's just. And they went back to a house covered in ash, and the pool filled, and yeah, it's scary. That was the January. I was up all night watching the news from the States,
and that makes it worse, doesn't it? Because you're not there, and because you're getting it secondhand through the news, and it always makes it seem worse because they're only showing the bit that's interesting for the news.
Absolutely.
And you just apply it.
And I know the map so well, So I
you'll
knew where that
recognize
is, and I know these streets, and I know which way it's going to go from there. Yeah, it was crazy. It started the day we left. It was nuts. We landed, and we were watching the news from the second we got back.
It's like that old Bill Hicks thing. Are you a Bill Hicks person?
Bits and pieces, yeah, I like it.
So his thing where he's talking about the LA riots and coming to the UK, and he's like, I set off and I land in London. It's like, LA burns to ground. He's like, what? Did I leave a cigarette lit or something? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's surreal. I can, another one of like, I was in somewhere in the Caribbean and the London riots were on, where we just flicked on the TV and there's a London bus on fire in like a street, and you're like, what's this? What's going on here? Yeah, it's a surreal experience to see places that on the news, like that kind of news. Yeah. Okay, I think we've done it on climate change. The last thing I'll ask you in this is, are you familiar with the Albert thing here in the UK? So the BBC did this thing called Albert, which was a big program, and I think some of it's still ongoing. It was a big program, and in the film industry as well, to kind of decarbonize and like make it lower impact and all this kind of stuff. And there's another organization in Leeds that works with all the theatres, Sustainable Arts in Leeds. Have you come across them?
Oh, no. That's
Sale.
Cool.
Really good.
I've seen the... Yeah. Okay.
They've been on the show. Jamie's been on the show. And so you can always listen to that episode.
Yeah, for sure.
They're doing really interesting stuff, and they're doing courses and so on in that kind of area.
Oh, that's cool.
So could be something maybe for the course to
absolutely.
throw in.
Yeah. I like changes that you see on set, though, where it's like they're not giving out millions of water bottles anymore, and it's all refillable and stuff like that. I like seeing that stuff happen. That's great.
Yeah, the small changes. And the thing is, it's all a bit more communal as well, which means that you're going to talk to people more, which is good.
Absolutely. And mindfulness on any level is good for humanity.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah. So we've done the 4 changey questions. How are we doing for time? So now it is the actual change question. So if you could change any 3 things about your work, so you can be like brutal and pragmatic, or you can be really fantastical. If you could change any 3 things about your work, what would you change?
The educator in me would like to be pragmatic and talk about it, but again, like I built everything on being fantastical, and I'd love to have more weird opportunities, and I think there's some really fantastic stuff happening in this country in terms of like the fact that Channel 4 came up here and they're really trying to diversify the voices. And there's a fantastic, I worked with a lot of really great directors. Rob Worsey is working there right now, which would be this great vampire movie, and Kaz Greenop lives around the corner. So these great Yorkshire directors who are all really doing stuff. And Jordan Scott Kennedy, who works with the unit in Bradford, you should have him, and he's still doing fantastic stuff. But like his short with these 2 kids that are on a council estate in Bradford, and they imagine their car is a spaceship. Like I love seeing stuff like that because it's such a specific, unique story. And I think we're heading in the right direction. And I think more that we see these voices from up here, because it is such a different temperament and sense of humor than stuff especially we see in America, typically stuff from down south. And I know we love All Creatures and we get little touches of it, but I'd like to see that become a little bit more pronounced, the diversity of voices and people that you see. It's really inspiring and fun, and like the humor in it. Like I was sat in the cinema, and one of the producers, she's like, "Oh, I love that you were laughing through that whole thing because we didn't know how it would translate." She was kind of watching me. Like we in Yorkshire get it, but do you get it? And so that's cool. I think it's pretty great. And then I think, fantastically for myself, I just want to keep doing weird stuff. And I learned early doors in LA. I was around a lot of very successful actors. I was in a group of people where I got to go to game nights with all sorts of celebrities. And I even ran game nights for celebrities. So I was around a lot of really famous people early days in LA. And they said that there's an adage, the only thing worse than an out-of-work actor is a working actor. They were all complaining, and I'm like, you guys are living the dream. And some of these people were on fantastic shows, and all they did was whinge about it. And I'm like, I don't ever want to be that, and I don't want to be ungrateful or complainy about something that we're very fortunate to get to do, because it's, the 1% of people in the union are working regularly. So as long as I'm working and I'm able to support my family doing it, that's the kind of fantastical side of it. Doesn't matter what the work is really for me, as long as I get to keep doing it. And, it's something I can do until I die, which is fantastic again. Like it's a cool job that way.
I mean, you've got that, because you're backstage and front stage, you're on camera, behind the camera as well. And you teach, you've kind of covered all bases, really, of like, I can do a bit of that, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. So you should be, touch wood, you should be golden. So
that's what I think. And some of that was by design. And again, others it was like, well, hey, here's an open door and people have given me opportunities. It's like, well, chomp down on those opportunities and make the best of it, really. Yeah. And again, like I'm constantly inspired by the younger people I met. The short film I cast, I've got 4 students of mine that I had something interesting, and it's kind of cool for me to get to work with them and kind of give back in that way. And so hopefully it can continue on. I'll keep going through these. Hopefully the doors will keep opening.
I'm going to ask you this on the recording, so I'm thinking here. So this TV show years ago in the 90s called TFI Friday, and Samuel L. Jackson was on there. And the host asked him, is there anything that you'd like to be on or anyone you'd like to work with particularly? And he said he'd really like to be in the new Star Wars. And then he ended up in the new Star Wars. So is there anyone that you'd really like to work with or anything that you'd really like to do that you haven't done yet? So say on here, it might happen.
Yeah, I like the manifesting nature of that. In the last year, I got to work with Tim Burton and Edgar Wright. So that's like 2 bucket list directors right there that I just cannot. I can't believe it happened.
You can't complain.
It just no. But I'm a huge comic book guy. Right here, sitting underneath my desk, I got 4 long boxes. I'm trying to figure out what to do with all my comic books. But I'm immersed in the Marvel culture. I was very close. I was penciled for a role on Iron Man 3, and that's the closest I got kind of getting into in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And now they're shooting those things here. I want to do something Marvel. I don't care. I could be a reporter asking Reed Richards a question. I don't care. I just want to pop up somewhere in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So there we go. That's my inner nerd.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that you'll be, maybe you'll catch one of the Avengers films. Yeah.
I mean, hey, they're going to be shooting over here for the next 4 years. So
I am available.
2-hour train ride, baby.
Yeah. So any other changes, anything else that you want to add on to that one?
I would love to plug this course. I'm doing this improv class.
Please do.
Yeah. So I'm fine. As I mentioned, I've been teaching improv all over Europe, and I've been selling out classes everywhere. And I thought, well, why am I not doing that here in Leeds? There is a fledgling improv community that's kind of been building up here. And I thought, well, I'd really love to throw my hat in the ring. Having taught improv now for almost 30 years. And again, I know it pretty intimately on all sides of the screen. So I'm hosting a class at Glee Comedy Club. I talked to them because they've got, that bunch of, they're new here and they've only got shows, I think, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday right now. I'm like, well, why don't I come in on a Tuesday night and run an improv class? So I'm going to start doing that in September. It's going to run for 5 weeks. And then there's going to be a show in October. So everyone can get up and kind of get on their feet and get in front of an audience. And then I think I'm going to bring a bunch of my favorite improv people I've met around Europe, have them fly in that weekend and kind of do the show with them that night.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun. And again, so it's just kind of letting people know that I'm here and that there's, I'm available.
Yeah. This was a question I had earlier when you were talking about, being in various places around Europe. Are you familiar with Boom Chicago?
Very. Yeah, I've done.
Do you know
performed
them?
over
Have
there.
you worked with them?
All of them, yeah. I
Yeah.
know Pep and Andrew, who created Boom Chicago, pretty well, and my friend Stacy's now the artistic director. And then, like I was mentioning, I came up with like Barinholtz and Josh Myers in L.A. and Seth Meyers, and Jill Benjamin went to high school with me, so she was his comedy partner. So I've known them for a long time. I was in New York last year, and Seth had me come see the show and hang out, and they're doing SNL here in the UK, so he was kind enough to put me in touch with the producers there, and so it's been pretty cool. Like I love Boom Chicago, and they've built a nice little brand there. All the shows they've done,
really good,
great.
and it's a really nice arrangement. Like the place is beautiful. Like the setup when you go into the theatre is really nice. I mean, this was 20 odd years ago when I was there,
Right. Yeah.
Like it's great, and if you're someone in Leeds and you're going to Amsterdam, which many of us do very often, and you've not seen Boom Chicago, go to the show. It's good.
Absolutely, because it's in English. You'll get it. It's just a super fun night. Yeah,
and you can contribute. You throw in ideas and stuff. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. I did the festival there 2 years ago, and I got to do a show with Brendan Hunt, who I've known for a long time, who's Ted Lasso. And that was an absolute blast. And it's the first time I'd gotten to perform in front of 400 people in years. So it was And I hold Boom Chicago a dear place in my heart. Yeah.
So I've got one more question on this, and then I'll do a little bit where we can sort of talk about whatever or just wrap up. So the final question is on universal basic income. I think I know how you're going to answer this. But so if there was a universal basic income, how do you think that might have affected your work or affect your work now?
Well, as somebody who has fallow periods, I think it's fantastic, and it would really put your mind at ease, and because it happens for everybody. And I think, oh goodness, I mean, all of the stigmatism of like, well, why aren't you working, or why aren't you doing this? It's like, well, I am, but it's all speculative and it'll pay off later. And there is merit in that, I think, and there's merit in entertainment. Everybody watches it, and it's just like, well, what kind of lives do you think the people live that create this stuff for you? And there needs to be times when you can write or do a stage show or develop something. So for me in the entertainment sector, it makes a lot of sense. And I think you can, the last hour, you see that I'm not a slacker. I'm not a slouch. I'm not somebody who's going to skive, to use another, word that you guys so lovingly embrace from stuff.
We've got some colourful words, haven't we?
You do, and I like it. It describes things a lot better than we do. But to assume that everybody who is in favor of it is lazy or something like that, I think that's very far from the truth. And people go through hardship and hard times. And I think universal credit is the ultimate indicator of a thriving society. If you are able to take care of all the people in your society, which you can do, the money's there. It's absolutely possible. The billionaire subsidies that could pay for the whole thing right now, and we'd be much better off as a collective group of humans that all live together and work for each other and create for each other.
And more cohesive as a society, I think. Like when we're not forced to compete against everybody else.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really funny coming from America that is rampant capitalism. And even myself, I was so irritated at the pace of things, or service industry. And because it is such a do or die for tips in America, like when you go to a restaurant, everybody's so full on because you're kind of ingratiated into that culture, and it drives.
Well, you're not getting anything else from anywhere else. It's like I've got to get this now.
You have to. You have to become something else to satiate your place within the pecking order of capitalism, right? And I know when I have friends and family come over, I see them stressing out about it. I'm like, oh, I realize how I've kind of grown and changed even from a little bit of socialism. And the amount of money that we saved by moving here. House prices are different in the north and things like that. But the cost of living and just being able to have, I had to pay into NHS when I got here. I paid a ton of money into it. But even the amount of money that I paid into it, I've gotten back tenfold. And the amount of care that I've gotten has been fantastic. I broke my thumb once and went to the emergency room, and they're like, why don't you go home, have your dinner, and we'll come back. We'll be ready for you. And it was just something like, I remember going to the emergency room in LA where I was paying through the nose for stuff. And I'm sat in a hallway for 6 hours, waiting for other people to be triaged. And so it's just been really nice. And anytime anybody starts to slag off the NHS, I'll go into them about it. Like, you guys do not know how lucky you are. The second things get privatized, oh boy, because the wait times are the same. You know, I know people who are paying dearly for stuff, and
it'll just be worse and cost you more.
Yeah, it really will.
It's kind of on trend with everything, isn't it?
Yeah. So you might complain about it now, but the other side of the grass is not greener. I promise you.
Yeah. I mean, even because I lived in Amsterdam for 2 years, and you pay an amount of insurance, but it's largely subsidized and socialized. But it's like, it's not better. Do you know what I mean? It's well, we can argue the toss now, given the state of various things here. But, you know, at the time, that experience was like, this isn't particularly better. This isn't like, you know, a better solution, a better service.
Yeah, and I mean, once you get the insurance companies involved, forget about it, because it's just exorbitant.
Yeah, I mean, and there was definitely more forms to fill in.
Well, that's the other shocking thing too. You show up here and you just get taken in. You don't have to sit and fill out forms before they even let you tell you what your problems are. So, and imagine that when you're bleeding or, you know, anything. You know, I was going into anaphylactic shock once, and they wanted to know if I had insurance first before my throat closed up. You know, so fun stuff.
What I will say on this, so just to kind of push back so that it's not all kind of one side. So first off, I will say Americans pay for stuff. Like, they pay for stuff and they pay for tips and stuff. And like, Americans are fine with buying stuff. Yorkshire people are not necessarily that fine with buying stuff and paying for stuff. We're very much like, no, can I get it for free? So I think that's a kind of good thing. I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to pay people for stuff. And obviously, like, there is a bit of a culture of, like, if you can get stuff free, like there is anywhere. But I think that's a really good thing about, like, America and Americans. And the other thing I want to ask just on that, if it had been there, though, if you'd have had that safety net security blanket, would you have done the stuff? Or would you have been more lazy about it? Would you think you would have sat on your laurels more?
No,
because it's like you would have done stuff because you're not lazy, but like, would you have done as much?
I carried on with life as if I had free healthcare. There was years where I didn't have it, and you know, I did break my thumb once in LA, and I never went to the doctor because I couldn't afford it. And I've got friends who, you know, had to take an Uber to the hospital because they didn't want to pay the $500 ambulance fee. You know, so I don't think it would have changed me knowing that I had it. It just was more dangerous, and it was dangerous for my brothers are actors, and one of my brothers has a condition, and it's put him severely at jeopardy. Like, his life was at risk at times by not having health insurance. So I don't think it changes your work ethic because, I've got the NHS. I think personally, I just know I would have carried on the same way and just kind of risked it. It's just a bigger gamble.
Yeah, and then if you think, like, so I imagine when I was sort of 18, 19, 20, I was just like, go for it. You know, like, you're kind of unstoppable. You kind of just want to go and go and go. You want to do the stuff that you want to do and you're interested, and you've got all that energy and motivation and enthusiasm because it's not being smashed out of you yet. You're like, it's there already. So if you could keep that going, like, if people have the opportunity to, like, I can stay with this, I can keep going with it. Like, maybe they shouldn't all the time. Otherwise, we'd all end up being actors and performers and bad poets, as they say. But, like, yeah, I think a lot of people drop out. A lot of talented people as well drop out just because they can't go anymore. You know? Like,
yeah. And I mean, like, that's the thing too. When I left, it was just untenable. And even when we left LA, I knew I couldn't keep doing what I wanted to do and live in that city. It was too expensive. It just and you know, to send my son to a nice school was going to be prohibitively expensive at 4 years old, because you'd have to send him to a school that cost at least $20,000 a year, at least, if you wanted something passable. And if you wanted something nice, it was going to be around 30. And that's just on top of everything else, you know? So, man, I can't say enough about what we exchanged our life for and the opportunities that he has and the life that he gets to live here. We go back to LA. He's like, I wish we could, you know, because, you know, he sees the nice stuff. He sees the theme parks and the beach, and it's like, but the day to day, man, if you were in the car every day for an hour, because it's going to be or 2 hours a day. That's your life. And then you're kind of stuck in your house because you can't walk around the neighborhoods. And, the bottom of our hill, we had a really nice condo. We had a tennis courts and a pool. It was a great little complex, but guys were getting knifed right down at the bottom of, the hill. And I had a show on that show on Hollywood Boulevard I had for 20 years. I saw 3 dead bodies out on Hollywood Boulevard in the time that it was there. So as much as it's glitz and glamour and there were, stars on the Walk of Fame in front of our theater, there was also that. So it was definitely a nice trade-off.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all of my questions. I did say, I had a little geek out at the beginning of this before we started recording. So, you mentioned The Running Man. So talk about that for a minute and just sort of, that's coming up. What else have you got coming up as well? So tell us a little bit about Running Man and tell us what else you've got coming up other than the Glee Club improv course.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got, I think I mentioned Wednesday, the new season comes out this week, and hopefully, touch wood, I'm supposed to be in 2 episodes of that. It's popping up, and that was pretty great. And then again, bucket list job. I got to get in work with Edgar Wright for The Running Man that comes out in November. Again, not allowed to say anything really, but it was just a fantastic experience. And Glenn Powell's a superhuman, and I just can't say enough about Edgar. But it was just absolutely some fun dream gigs. And then I've got a show, Neuromancer on Apple Plus that'll be coming out in the new year too. I've got a little role on that. So some fun gigs in the works. And then
the William Gibson.
Yes, they have turned it into a series.
Who's doing it?
Apple Plus.
Oh, does it look good?
It's going to be pretty cool. They were shooting down at Shinfield on the sound stages down there. Pretty.
That's exciting.
Incredible.
Have you read it?
I've not read it.
Read it, man. It's really good.
That's what I heard. My brothers were saying, like, my brother had it on his nightstand. He's like, you got to read it.
Yeah,
so,
it's good. Yeah. It's about time, really. But oh god, I hope it's good.
I think it's gonna be. From what I got from everybody on set was they're really doing it right. So.
But they've got the money, haven't they? So and Severance was the first series was excellent. I'm a bit on the second.
I'm with you.
So before you go, because I think you mentioned it on the recording, Dark Side of the Moon, Transformers, Michael Bay. So I just want to mention that because I mean I'm not a Transformers person, but God, I love The Rock. It's one of my I was working at the Odeon in Leeds when it used to be where the Primark Sports Direct. So that used to be an Odeon.
Oh right, okay.
And the Beatles played there, Ella Fitzgerald played there, in a concert venue stuff. And Leeds did its typical thing of screw our heritage. But that was an amazing building. And I watched The Rock there, and I would just sit in that screen all day, just watching it over and over again.
I think everybody's got a secret affinity for one of the Michael
Everyone
Bay
loves at least one Michael Bay.
My wife loves Armageddon. I was very surprised to find that out.
It's so stupid.
Later into our marriage. Yeah. I just love Armageddon.
But it was great. Kills it for me.
It was great working with him. It was, that South Park bit where he's crashing the trucks. And to watch him direct was much like that. He's like, this is going to go there and that. Boom, 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 boom.
Everything has to be awesome.
Yeah. And there was a time I was watching him, direct a scene and he was going through it with the camera up and he's like, this is this. And you're going to scream out that door and then slam it in this. And he turned to the guy, he's like, did you get that? And the guy's like, he's like, forget it. And he grabbed the camera and he camera opped the whole scene himself. I'm like, that's cool. That was really cool. Yeah,
cool. Anything else that you want to say, talk about, revisit?
No, that's it. I mean, I just think that the cool thing is, and me seeing that you had this podcast, I really like to articulate how cool it is. My love for Yorkshire's, through COVID, that was another thing that I discovered because all we did was walk through the countryside and, I had a book of walks and we're ticking through it. And the stuff that's even fascinating to find that are just less than a mile from my house. There's a 5,000-year-old stone that I haven't seen yet that I didn't know was there,
Yeah.
And, getting to appreciate that this is a big, beautiful planet and we can keep moving our cheese and we can keep finding new stuff. And the fact that I was given a second lease on life here and I can still do what I want to do is just really kind of magical. And I really appreciate everybody in our town and they're so lovely. I've gotten free loaves of bread and my butcher knows me now. And it's so lovely. And it's not to say that I didn't have people in LA that were like I knew the woman at Herb's Burgers, and she always wrote, nice notes on my plate. There's stuff, little stuff like that, but it is more prevalent here, and I really appreciate that. And again, like talking about community, you're kind of knowing that we're all kind of going through the same stuff. There seems to be a little bit more empathy for that. And again, like it could just be that I'm provincially outside of the city, but I really enjoy Leeds a lot too, and living here. So, for all the locals, thank you for warmly taking me in and showing what a cool place this is. A special place. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those places, I think it's quite similar. Australia has a similar thing where we talk about how amazing it is, but also at the same time, we're like, we hate it.
Yeah.
Kind of like, it's rubbish, it's all crap. But also, it's brilliant, it's the best thing in the world.
Well, and my wife too, she only ever wanted to get away. And, and after living in LA.
And then you only want to come back.
Yeah. And she's like, I never in my wildest dreams thought I would end up back in Yorkshire or living here, having this life. And every day she said, I love our house. I love our life. And that's great. And, the old adage, happy wife, happy life. There you go. So keeping my Yorkshire wife happy. Yeah.
Have you been to... Because I think currently my favourite place is Haworth. Have you been to Haworth yet?
Haworth is great, yeah. My mom came 2 years ago, and she was a big fan of Wuthering Heights and everything. So she just loved that I took her there. It was sort of a little surprise one day. And yeah it's gorgeous. We've stayed overnight
as well.
Oh, yeah. One time we were hiking, and it started to snow, and it was just epic. And to come back into that village with this, it's like, yeah.
There's nothing better than, like, you traipse through the snow, and it's horrible and awful, and then you get in a pub with a real fire and you sit down with a proper pint and some nice grub.
Forget about it. One time at the Craven Arms, I did a snowy walk, and I walked in and they had a vat on the fire of mulled wine. I'm like,
oh yes,
did we just go back in time? Like, that was literally
absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you very much for doing this, Derek. Where can people find you socials wise? Obviously they know about Glee, the Glee Club thing coming up, but yeah, give us more info on that. I will put everything in the show notes as well, but yeah, just tell us.
That's fine. I think that's the best place to kind of get in contact with me. I am on Instagram, but I'm private, so I kind of have weeded out some of the things. But I don't know, if you look interesting, maybe I'll friend you. I'm the Derek Miller on Instagram, so maybe, or maybe I just won't see it. Don't take it personally either way. Yeah.
And I'll put your IMDb in there as well if you want.
Yeah, please. I'm just gonna get a little more interesting in the next year, so that's great.
Cool. Well, I wish you all the success in the future. And
thanks so much. It was great to chat, and thanks. I appreciate having me. Cheers.
Thank you again to Derek for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. You can find Derek at www.firsttakeworkshops.co.uk/Derek Miller. I've also put a bunch of other links in the show notes, so go check those out. Please consider donating to this project. If you're listening to this on the Captivate player, you can just hit the donate button on the player that you're using, and that will take you straight to this show's Ko-fi page, where you can donate any amount you would like to or can afford to. Donations will really help me with the costs and labour for this episode, what you just listened to, and everything else to do with working hours. Anything you can and do donate will truly be a massive help. Please consider joining the Patreon to contribute to building up this project. Patreon memberships start at £6 a month. That's less than the price of anything you'd buy an hour of in The Real. And I'm giving you hours of local historical content each month. £6 is basically a craft beer a month for all of this content. So buy me a beer. Go to patreon.com/C4Creator/working hours pod. Don't forget, this show is made under the Western Studios Leeds Limited brand, which is my podcast-making business to support Working Hours. And Working Hours is meant to support and bring in clients for Western Studios. It's not doing very well at that at the moment. I currently make the very popular Leeds Business Podcast for Phil Fraser and the Specialist Legal Costs Podcast, For the Love of Costs, for Clarion Solicitors. If you have a podcast project you'd like to get off the ground, or you have an existing podcast that you'd like some support with at a price you can sustainably afford, then do get in touch. More details in the credits about Western Studios. If you would like to contact me about anything working hours related, then you can email this show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it is impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So try to work for peace and try to plan with kindness. Raise your voice when necessary and reduce your harm where you can. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and do be kind to one another. Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited, created and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Remember, Western Studios Leeds Limited when you're ready to start making your content in West Yorkshire. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook, facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds, and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Bookmark western-studios.com so you can see the latest prices and use my contact page to drop me a message about your own podcast project or working hours at any time from anywhere. Maybe you want or need a podcast host, co-host or narrator for your podcast project. Maybe you just need another voice for one or more episodes of your show. Podcasts are so much more than gossip, book promotions and marketing for online courses. Podcasts and other audio content get your online brand out there. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to have an audiobook or video course? Want to share your learning, knowledge and expertise in your field? Want to learn, teach or raise awareness of something general or particular? Want to improve internal comms with messages your staff might actually engage with? Or do you just want to brighten up the world with some entertaining content? Then make a podcast. If you're making your podcast within West Yorkshire, then think about making it with western-studios.com. Whatever your podcast questions or needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.